This gets me to the assignment Jim first gave me almost a year ago, which was to come and make some comments on the conference as I observed it from the perspective of somebody who's had some experience in government and in particular in dealing with global and innovation issues over now a considerable number of years. And I have 5 comments I want to share with you. The first is a concern on my part that the innovation or technology-driven innovation is accelerating a global digital divide. Even while we are, in a sense, having innovation play more globally, I worry that the benefits will not be broadly shared across the global economy. Just over a decade ago, I had the opportunity to co-chair the G8 Digital Opportunity Task Force, and that morphed into a UN commission on the digital divide. And these were the early days where the focus was on providing access to the emerging markets and underdeveloped markets of the basic infrastructure, of introducing law and e-commerce and e-government in ways that would accelerate, we felt, the deployment of ICTs and other technologies which would assist the acceleration of the economies of the developing world and help close the digital gap that was accelerating the economic gap that we saw. And that led to a whole range of activities, some in civil society, some by governments, and a particular Canadian project called Enablus, which still works in Africa, to encourage and develop civil society's capacity to utilize technologies and ICTs in particular. The evolution of technology and innovation itself has now moved beyond the access question. It's into the wealth creation dimension of economic development. And I think that access to communications technologies in particular have altered the civil society discourse, certainly have altered politics in any number of countries. When, Jim, your comments with respect to the Arab Spring or what's going on in Kiev or Cairo in the past speak to a social movement that has been animated by the innovation that we've experienced over the last decade. But the very fact that we are a more globally connected world ensures that those who do not have the benefits of the global economy know about it. Think of how dispersed technologies in Bangladesh are, for example, or Nigeria, or the broader Middle East. And when we look forward in a world in which, look, in the top 12 countries by population by mid-century, it'll include the Democratic Republic of Congo, Ethiopia, Nigeria, Bangladesh. If those countries are only using technologies to observe economic growth and not participating in economic growth, we have a problem. So what happens to those left behind is a concern that is not just an altruistic concern, it's a concern for our whole global innovation system. The second piece of observation I would have is that governments have moved from the preoccupation we had of digital divide, access, stimulating e-commerce and e-government, to one of a post-9/11 world in which cybersecurity is the new preoccupation of government. And the consequences of Snowden and even the consequences of Heartbleed have yet to fill the potential, at least, of those forces putting a damper on innovation. To to lead to unintended consequences, perhaps, in the rollout of innovation-based technologies. We've got to find ways of giving confidence back to the consumer and the citizen that information and integrity of information has been secured and is properly used in a democratic and free society. The third point I'd like to make is I would refer to it as the great Canadian conceit. The world needs us more than we need the world. That is just not true. And yet it permeates a good deal, frankly, of public policy in my experience. Nowhere do I feel that more compelling than in the pace or complacency of pace with which Canada is observing and informing itself on the rise of Asia. I cannot think of a more economic, political, and security-changing tectonic shift that is occurring that has greater impact on Canada than what the rise of Asia. That is not a negative observation. It's the truth. And yet we, even as a Pacific country, haven't prepared ourselves from a policy point of view, I would argue, to both understand and then take advantage of the rise of Asia. And it's a huge challenge because the rise of Asia necessarily means coming to terms with what is a China that is the largest economy in the world before mid-century, and certainly our number 2 economic relationship after the United States. And we have not yet fully appreciated what the dynamic role and opportunity we have as a country. And China is asking for that engagement. We have yet to, for example, ratify the Investment Protection Agreement. We have yet to respond to the Joint Complementarity Study, which identified specific sectors in which Canada and China governments together have identified areas of enhanced freer trade. And by sending the signal of complacency or we don't have time to get to that yet, our competition is ahead of us in developing their relationships in China. And I fear deeply that we are falling behind in our Asian agenda as a country that will undermine our capacity to innovate and to participate in the innovation taking place in Asia generally. This seems not to be the week to compliment former Premier of Alberta, but the first piece of legislation that Alison Redford brought to the Alberta legislature, Bill 1, was to create an advisory council on Asia for Alberta. And that signaled her belief and her government's belief that we have to better understand what is going on in Asia so that we can bring the public along with us in having public support for what we need to do to engage in a more constructive fashion with China and Asia more generally. The kind of infrastructure that we must build, whether it's policy infrastructure or foreign direct investment or physical infrastructure of pipelines, gateways, or intellectual infrastructure of university cooperation and student exchange, Alberta has something to tell us about what we need to do and how we need to accelerate our understanding of and participating in the global innovation that China represents. Fourth, and related to that, we need a national conversation on Canada's economic future. Globalization is changing the dynamic of the consensus of our economic model. By the way, we've done this before. In the 1980s, and even before that, as we led to the free trade agreement with the United States, we changed our fundamental economic space in North America with a whole series of policies and investments and ways in which business adopted to the marketplace to create this common economic space of North America. And that's all very good, but it doesn't allow us, don't think that you're global because you're in Buffalo. It doesn't allow us to adequately participate in the new economy of global innovation. And just as it took years for us to better understand what the common economic space of North America meant for Canadian entrepreneurs, Canadian businesses, Canadian schools, and Canadian factories, we have to find a method of coming to terms with what it means to build a Canadian participation in the global economy of the 21st century. And I would argue that that is one role that the Government of Canada needs to lead but not own. It has the power to convene, but this is a bigger question than governments. It's a bigger question than just business. It is how do we frame the expectations of change in a way that the public will sense the urgency of which I speak when I say that global economic power is shifting faster than our capacity to both understand and take advantage of that shift for our country. The fifth observation I would make is born of the conviction that we will move too slowly on four to adequately address the coming to terms of this new global reality. And that's in the absence of that Royal Commission or that broader-based engagement on Canada's economic future. We at least start here in Waterloo with a deliberate strategy of engaging in the emerging markets in a more active and disciplined fashion than inertia allows. What do I mean by that? Well, wouldn't it be great if we took up some of the suggestions of the last panel of bringing together entrepreneurs, bringing together universities, bringing together research across, let's say, as a proxy for the emerging economies, the G20, and found ways of bringing an understanding of our ecosystem to those nodes of innovation, and in a sense learning and having them learn from us as we would learn from them. This is all about better understanding the global economy. And we cannot, as Canadians, be complacent and believe that being tied to this common economic space of North America secures our global future. Our securing of the global future will require a dedicated national commitment to upping our game, to embracing the competition, doing away with some of the barriers to competition, which we don't even know any longer are barriers. Think about supply management. We still have export restrictions on logs. We are not the free traders in reality that we pretend we are in rhetoric. So my challenge to you and to this group is to stimulate and accelerate a global awareness amongst the ecosystems of the emerging economies, and to what better base do this from than Waterloo, which is certainly the leader in Canada's innovation agenda, and take that to the world. Thank you.